MLB 10 The Show came out on March 2nd, 2010. This game was released for PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation Portable. It had 2009 AL MVP Joe Mauer on the cover of the game. This was one of the final years where an MLB The Show game saw a release on so many different consoles. According to the Wikipedia article I read, there was still 200,000 versions of this game sold just for PS2. I was kind of shocked seeing that, I'm not gonna lie. I do remember enjoying this game back in the day and playing it a lot with my friends, but there's just something about this game that just does not scratch my nostalgia itch. And that's not for a lack of playing this game. I logged more than enough hours in this game, believe me. MLB 10 The Show is actually the first year to include Home Run Derby. I was actually taken aback when I read that. I did not know earlier installments of the MLB series did not have Home Run Derby. Either way, Home Run Derby is in this game and it is still fairly enjoyable and you can still easily go back and play it. The only annoying part of the Home Run Derby in this game is how you cannot fast forward after each hit. It is so annoying. I'm really glad they have that feature in the newer games. Also seeing the players in front of the dugout react to every single home run gets old so quick and it's so annoying. The announcing in this game borders on horrendous.
Not quite sure what was wrong with that one.
I think we all remember how wooden and repetitive announcing used to be in sports games, and this game is no exception. The broadcasting team in this game is of course Matt Vasgersian, Rex Hudler, and Eric Karros. It's honestly just all horrible, and it gets so repetitive so quickly. They're already repeating stuff within the first game I played. That's how bad it is. The soundtrack in this game also isn't all that great. I can't play any of the songs here for obvious reasons, but just look it up if you're curious and can't remember any of the songs. Without further ado, let's get into the gameplay of MLB 10. I have to say the gameplay in this game is fairly miserable. I do not know how else to put it. Coming from MLB The Show 20 to this game is a drastic change, and the hitting, fielding, and pitching feels so wooden and robotic. I may always give MLB The Show a hard time, but this game has definitely improved over the last decade. Going back and playing MLB 10 has definitely opened my eyes to that. The hitting does not feel fun at all. Maybe I just did not spend enough time with this game when I went and recorded all the gameplay, but it just feels off and not enjoyable. I could just be used to the new zone feature that the newer MLB games have, and it makes the hitting a bit more fun and a little bit easier, I think, in my opinion. But MLB 10 felt like a worse version of MVP 05. When you're hitting, the ball gets on you almost immediately. It feels similar to MVP in that way, but more clunky and harder to pick up the pitch. With that said, this was also a time before contact swing was even in the game. I did not remember that at all. And that circle was actually the button for bunting back in MLB 10, so you only had the option to power swing with square or to normal swing with X. Back in MLB 10, you could also check in on the third baseman with a camera zoom, which is not really a needed feature nowadays with more of the fisheye lens that they give you for the hitting view. The camera angle also feels dramatically different when you're hitting compared to what you get in MLB 20. The camera angles of MLB 20 feel a lot more natural compared to MLB 10. Now, the fielding in this game isn't horrible, but it isn't the best either. It kind of feels like you have to force the player to go to the ball in the outfield and make a play, and it doesn't feel like you naturally get to the ball. I don't know how else to put it. I couldn't think of the right words to describe that other than what I just said. When you're in the infield, that still plays pretty well. I forgot how quick and computerized the throwing was back in this game. When you field a ground ball, how you can instantly throw it to first or second or whatever. I don't hate that. I'd rather have that than the lollygagging that sometimes takes place in MLB 20 when throwing out a runner, but it still just feels odd. The only thing that stands out in this game is how you could put a player completely out of position in a new position and it'd be completely fine. I had Griffey catching a game. He's a lefty and he's old in this game and he was catching just fine. My buddy and I would always do this back in the day, and we put a big power hitter behind the dish like Big Papi and go unscathed with no errors. That's definitely not something you can do in MLB 20, but it was quite fun to do in this game. The pitching in this game is painstakingly awful in my opinion. I hated every second while pitching in this game. It's clunky, and it still has the old feature where the balls would make that dramatic break and kind of feel unrealistic. If you've played plenty of MLB, you know what I'm talking about. I feel like the new MLB games have definitely fixed that. The pitches feel more natural. A quick disclaimer, I also use the analog pitching feature, and I have for a long time and really enjoyed that compared to the button mechanic. Having to go back to the button mechanic, it is horrid. I really did not enjoy that. I will not take the analog pitching for granted any longer, believe me. That is definitely a feature where I'm glad MLB implemented it into their games. I do not know what else to say about pitching other than it is clunky, unrealistic feeling, and overall, just not any fun to do. Now, base running is virtually unchanged. I did not notice anything different from what the base running is in the current game, so there's nothing really to report on this front. It was fine in 2010, and it's fine in 2020. Now let's talk about some other features in this game. This game still had features like Home Run Derby, which we talked about earlier, Road to the Show, and Franchise Mode. Road to the Show is a stripped down version of what you know it as today, but is still very similar to what we have in 2020. There are definitely less features to mess around with when it comes to Road to the Show, but you still get a creative player experience and you get their journey through the minors and the majors. It's still an enjoyable mode to have in these games, but going back and playing such an old version of Road to the Show, it just felt dated and not as enjoyable. But you know, that is understandable. Franchise mode is virtually unchanged too. It is pretty much the same old franchise mode we know and love, just with 2010 rosters. I know I spent plenty of time on this mode back in 2010, and it's still enjoyable to dip back into in 2020 and see all the old players back in this game. One quick thing too, back when you used to be able to draft with a friend on franchise mode, you actually used to be able to use 2 controllers back in 2010, where now you cannot, you can only use 1 controller. So that is a feature I would like to see in the newer MLB games. I don't know why they got away from that, because people still do hang out with friends and play these games and draft. I don't know why they got rid of that good feature. I can honestly say, looking back, that 2010 was nearing the end of an era with some very notable players. The team I drafted in franchise mode was super old and may have been caught using steroids just a few times, but still enjoyable nonetheless. It was fun being able to play with all those old guys again. I know you can still play with most of them in MLB 20, but it just feels different knowing that they were actually still playing then. Now, this game was graphically pretty strong, especially for 2010, but there's just something off about the graphics in this game. Yes, it looks great compared to MVP 05, for example, but all the stadiums and environments still kind of feel sterile compared to MLB 20. Yes, this may be me nitpicking, but that's just what we do here. The player models also seem to be pretty good and have no real major issues. I do think that some of the batting stances are way off though, like Ichiro and Griffey. Just take a look. But I digress. One last thing, why are all the catchers so huge in this game? This has always bothered me. Just look at this. It's so odd. Overall, MLB 10 The Show is a product of its era, and it definitely shows its age here in 2020. Maybe if you were very nostalgic about this game like how I am with MVP 05, you will still love this game when you go back and play it here in 2020 or in the future. Sadly, that's just not the case for me. My memories of this game are better than actually going back and playing this game. I mainly think this game just gets stuck between too many console cycles and tries to please everyone. If it was just made for PS3, I'm sure this game would have been a little bit better, but they had to develop it for all 3 platforms at the time, so it's understandable. I may not love this game in 2020, but I say you should look at this game as a pioneer, and if we did not have this game, we may not have MLB The Show 20 today. Do you still go back and play it in 2020? Let me know your thoughts on the game in the comment section down below, and while you're down there, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, guys, thanks for watching.